Well, folks, you know you're in for a real treat when you hear that tune because it's time for another episode of the RecPoker podcast. This is a chats edition, but we also have a forums edition every week, just talking strategy. I'm your host, Rob Washam, filling in today for our leader, Jim Reid, as he is in Vegas auditioning for a spot as a loose cannon in the Big Game on Tour hosted by PokerStars. So good luck, Jim. In the meantime, you can find me as Radman50 almost everywhere. And we have the best freaking job in the world, talking poker with our friends here on the podcast every Monday night at 7:30 Eastern, live on YouTube. Join us every week for free, and maybe you can win a prize. Today's guest is David Lappin from the popular Chip Race podcast. The interview was taped earlier, so we won't be bringing it to you live tonight. But stick around and we'll do a live broadcast of our forums edition for all of our YouTube followers. I have to mention that we are brought to you by Running Aces, the official sponsor of the RecPoker podcast. Most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we depend on support from our sponsors and also from our premium members who take part in our training material and study opportunities for only $22 a month. Do you like talking poker with your friends? For just 75 cents a day, come connect over Zoom with other fun, encouraging poker players, all trying to get better, or sign up for free, because everything starts with a free account at rec.poker, where all you need is to join is an email, address, and a smile. But remember, you can always get your first month of premium for only $5 by using code RecPoker at checkout. Now, they're letting me host the show today, but I'm only one man, and it takes a group, a gang, a village, a crew to make all the magic around here happen. And we call this group of wizards the RECing Crew. If you want to learn more about me or the rest of the RECing Crew, just go to rec.poker/crew, or you can just listen up because you're about to meet a few of them right now on the air, starting with our producing co-host, Rick Jones.
Well, I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Twitter or 5x5 in the Poker Stars home game. And I have two things to say tonight. First of all, I help run our monthly strategy segment called The Deep Dive. And secondly, the reason Jim is missing, as Rob mentioned, is he's trying out for that. And if you have not read the Poker.org article about Jim Reid's adventure in trying out for this, I encourage everyone to go out there and read it because it's a fun read.
And I am John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere. And I try to keep our home games running.
Man, a great job you do of it also, John. Not an easy task. All right, we're going to splice in that interview later. So for now, I'd like to invite our viewers to start typing food bank into the YouTube chat. What the heck?
Conversation I was...
While they're doing that, should I start the home games?
Yeah, first of all, I'm just gonna talk a little bit. Today we're going to give away a free month at Red Chip Poker. So we're starting to, we want to be more specific about the kind of prizes we're giving away and make it more impactful for people. And as you know, you don't know who is suffering from food insecurity in your community. So we encourage you to Google food banks near me and give a donation to your local food bank. And let's thank Red Chip Poker for supporting our efforts. Remember, if you're not a lucky winner this week, you can still get a free week of Red Chip Poker by going to rec.poker resources and clicking on the Learning Partners link. Okay, let's go to John Somsky and ask him to unmute, get his pronunciation skills engaged, and give us a rundown of our home game winners for the past week.
Well, I thought the fewer pronunciation skills I have, the more entertainment value it had. So I'm conflicted here. But on October 28th, Beat Chip Charles Allen got his second nightly victory of the year. Carl 0621, Carl Anderson got his third nightly victory for the year. PSO Kunzerad got his or her first nightly victory for the year. LL Tahoe got his or her fifth nightly victory for the year. Keck Geek, and that's Keck Geek Senior for those keeping track, got his sixth nightly victory for the year. Jay Sedham Jeff S got his 12th nightly victory for the year. And then on October 30th, Gopher Boy TJM Taylor got his fourth daily mixed practice event victory for the year.
Wow.
Bone Crusher 14, Marcel Dusick got his fourth international victory for the year. And then PSO Kunzerad got his or her first international victory of the year. And then convincingly, Eric Jin won the LPP event for the first time this year. So he can contact info at rec.poker for his free month at Learn Pro Poker.
All right. Way to go, Eric. One of our
Yeah.
RECing Crew members.
Right.
You can find him on the RECing Crew page. All right. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to put their names or to type in food bank in the YouTube chat. Do we have any?
We have the entries are slim right now.
Yeah, normally people are got a lot more time to figure out what they're going to do and to
It's all I blame David Lappin. We just blame David Lappin.
exactly.
Scapegoat for everything.
Why does he have to live in
I don't know.
Europe?
And why can't he stay up till 2 a.m? What's wrong with this guy?
Right. Look what Dara and Barry did. I mean, both of them. They were there for the whole episode live.
I know.
What the
some
heck?
people have commitment and some people are David Lappin.
I'm sure he's gonna love that. So let's give him a little bit more time. Is there any comments about how horrible we're doing today?
Don't let our
is
democracy become a
everything
complete dumpster fire. By voting.
I don't know where now we're getting sound coming in somehow.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was my I was going to the YouTube and I don't have the paid for version, so I
gotta get ads all the time.
Right. So I'm getting ads. So let's see, we got Hubert in there. That's about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like Hubert's gonna win a free month of Red
Well,
Chip
he says
Poker.
he's already won twice. He wants someone else to win. So you know what? We're gonna hold on to this one. We're gonna hold on to this prize, and maybe we'll do two in the following week or something. Oh, there's half the entry. Eric answered has the word food in the
Right. He must want a free month of Red Chip Poker.
He wants half a month.
Well, there you go. Well, remember you can get a free week. All right.
Type bank. Although since he's got the basically the most effort, I think we'll award it to Eric this month.
Okay, we can do that.
All right.
We can do that. So Eric, send an email to info@rec.poker and let us know when you want us to activate your free month at Red Chip Poker.
All right, we are here with David K. Lappin. David and I, we've crossed each other's paths a little bit over the last few years. It's generally been a pleasure. We've had some fun competitions. You whooped my butt in the karaoke competition in Dublin at the Irish Poker Open last year. Although I whooped you in the split the G, and like that should really hurt as an Irish guy. Like I want you to feel the pain for that still and for years to come. But we've got all sorts of other exciting news. David recently won Poker.org's Runner competition, which means that he's set up for a North American Poker Tour Golden Pass. He's going to be in Vegas next week, auditioning for the big game on tour. And he got a major upgrade in the roommate department because we are going to be bunking up together for all of next week there in sunny Las Vegas, which is super exciting. David Lappin, welcome back to the RecPoker podcast.
Thank you, Jim. So great to be back. Yeah, no, look, delighted to be bunking in with you. I definitely can't call it an upgrade now, in fairness. Daryl Carney tunes into this show, so there's no way I can say something
That's a
like
fair
that.
point.
What I would say though is you told loads of lies there. Firstly, we're not really that friendly. We're sworn enemies. Secondly, you are a Guinness drinker and I am not. So you had an inherent advantage there, and I still came second in the splitting of the G competition. And you were way better than me at the karaoke, but you unfortunately chose a Scottish song that was not going to resonate with an Irish crowd quite as much as my absolute pandering to the Irish choice of Fairy Tale New York. And also, you suffered from the fact that people knew that you do karaoke and are quite good at it, whereas I benefited from people's assumptions that I would be awful, and I was slightly better than awful.
Well, I will say you are correct. I was just trying to be polite. I don't really like you much at all, and I kind of figure you as poker's greatest villain, which I think all the more accurate now that you've stolen the runner prize from other people who were like taking a much more ethical approach. We'll get into that in a little longer. Hold on, no, we're
Whoa,
gonna
whoa,
get
whoa, whoa.
no,
We'll get into
no,
the
no.
ethics as well.
Scurrilous is the word I will use. But but yeah, and I am super excited about this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get right into it actually. So let's just start talking about the runner. So Poker.org had this fantastic competition where you could come and win a prize that is not only a main event seat, but also a bunch of travel expenses and a fast pass through to the audition phase of the big game on tour. So a lot of really cool stuff going on there. It was an incredibly difficult challenge. It was a series of clues leading out over 2 or 3 weeks, I think, all various different platforms, different types of clues. They did a really good job stumping a lot of people, but they didn't stump you, David. So I just assuming you had some like backdoor way of cheating. I'm sure you sort of like spoke to someone on the board that we're not going to get into here, but like I know you didn't earn this honestly, but can you just kind of like share with us your journey through this scavenger hunt of infamy?
I earned it very honestly. How dare you? So much like yourself, I was sort of intrigued by the opening of the competition. There was a couple of easy-ish clues at the start, which kind of dragged you in. You spent maybe 5 or 10 minutes on them, and you got them. And in my head, I was like, "Oh, this thing might go on for a week, and there's like a clue a day. I'll certainly check it out and see where it goes. Maybe 100 people will get to the end of the week, and I have a 1 in 100 chance, and that's fine." But what became very apparent very quickly, by probably about day three, was that the mastermind behind this, which I now know to be Brad Willis and Slow Poker himself and Lee over there at Poker.org, uh, it was a really, really complex, layered clue leading to clue leading to clue, cryptic, but sort of like you had to be good at coding, which I amn't, and I'm not really a computer guy. But where I was probably decent was I was good at the cryptic stuff. I was good at the
Mm.
riddle solving, and I was good at figuring out what the thing was. And whether that ended up being like a weird Python maze, or it ended up being steganography, or it ended up being a kind of an allusion in one of them to a crossword puzzle that I was aware of. I was good at figuring out what it was and sometimes how to solve it. And then my girlfriend Sharon is actually really good with computers. So if it had a coding element to
Mm.
it or a decryption element to it with computers, she helped me out hugely on that stuff. And then in the late game, I have a very good friend as well, David Block, who also helped me with one that I couldn't figure out really late in the game. And essentially, we gathered up numbers. Either your clues led to more clues or your clues led to numbers. And it became apparent that we're going to be left with 8 2-digit numbers, although there was one 3-digit number right at the end. And in my mind, it was going to end up being either a GPG decryption key, similar to how people send things privately through the internet, and maybe the pass would materialize if you put in the right key, or it was going to be coordinates. And going into the last day, I realized that it was probably more likely to be coordinates, and actually given the numbers, one of them being 3 digits. And again, I sort of made a leap that will probably be in America because it was a kind of an America-centric thing. There are only so many cities along the coordinates of 110 degrees. And I thought, well, it's not going to be like under a rock on the side of the road. It's going to be like in a town or by a landmark. So I started plotting the day before. So before we even got confirmation that it was to do with coordinates, I was sort of thinking ahead. And I was also trying to use the kind of general dangling clues that had been left behind during the 2 weeks of puzzling. Because sometimes you had something that you were like, I never connected that to it. And I kept thinking it's so elegantly made, everything will come to be sensible at the end. So I had like an image board of words. One was corner, the word corner, it'll be at a corner. So I kept thinking along those lines. And when I plotted, there were only 5 towns in America that were on this line of longitude. So I cross-referenced them with all the random clues. There was a thing about a stegosaurus. There was loads of these kinds of things, and trying to find out I ended up down a rabbit hole where I watched an episode of Bonanza from the 1960s. I watched an episode of the A-Team at one point. Thanks for all this, by the way, Brad. I have loads of useless trivia now. So I made loads of mistakes. That's one thing that I need to emphasize here. Me saying it was really difficult kind of is a way of me saying I'm so clever that I got it. But actually, it was really difficult. Plus, you had to spend loads of time. So you had to be a sad person who had time on their hands to actually go down all the rabbit holes, get all the wrong answers before you found the right one. But then, and I think you were going to ask me this question, maybe you alluded to it already, but down the home stretch, I didn't know how many people were also making good progress. And there was also a suggestion from Brad that other people should team up and they could put their clues together. And so they only got 4 of the 8. And I was sitting there with, I thought 8 of the 8. Turned out I had one of them wrong, but I was there with 8 of the 8. If people put them together, maybe they get there first because they decided to be a team. So I was really conscious of that. So on the last day, there was this weird piece of iconography in a video they put on the EPT stream, which looked a bit like the rabbit from Donnie Darko. And I thought, well, maybe I could pretend to be Mr. Rabbit because my name is Lappin. Lappin is French for rabbit. So I kept doing this thing where maybe I would give clues. So people were coming into my DMs and asking me for clues. And if it was for the easy stuff at the beginning of it, I'd give a good clue. And they would be like, oh, thanks so much. And then they'd figure out and they go, oh, your man is giving clues away. So I had people coming into my DMs now looking for clues. And then when I knew that they were the serious players, I just sent them on wild goose chases. So they were trying to figure out like what's in the box. I had this character of a rabbit with a wizard hat, and in the box was a tortoise.
The turtle.
It meant nothing.
So I'll tell you, David, you absolutely got me on that one. So one of the things that was cool about this promotion was they made it clear that you could either be following along all throughout the entire time, and you'd have like a head start at the end. Or you could just jump in at the end and still try and solve all the clues, and maybe even if you don't solve all the clues, you could still win the prize. And my wife and I, Mrs. Bluffsterini, who you're familiar with from our time in Dublin, she and I were like invested in this because she really wants me to audition for the big game, and obviously this is like a really cool ticket just on its own to go down and play in the NAPT. But we were like really frustrated with how hard the clues were. And I'm just not, David, I'm not as smart as you. Like I fell off way earlier in this. And I was just like, I can't even keep trying. Like I'm so far behind it. I'm definitely not going to win it. But we got up to the last day and I was like, so maybe there's a chance that they like open the door like for everyone else. And there's a chance to get in there. And I someone reposted one of your tweets or something, and it was that one, and I went and I looked at your Twitter page, and there were all these like cryptic things at the door, and then you deleted one of them so it wasn't there anymore. You totally got me. And while they were opening the door at the end, it happened to be during our recording session for the RecPoker podcast every Monday night. And so I texted my wife and I was like, hey, I'm going to be recording. Can you just like keep an eye on Lappin's Twitter page for the next hour? Because if something comes up, like maybe there's just a link. So you did such a good job with that. I'm impressed as a competitor with the lengths that you went to and the outside the box thinking that you employed. And I'm not let down as someone who knows in your heart that you truly are poker's greatest villain, that you would go to these diabolical lengths to get it to trip up the other people in the race with you. So my hat's off to you as a competitor, and also just like Yeah, you played that game particularly well, and it pains me to say it, but I'm glad you won. Congratulations.
Oh no, thank you very much. Yeah, the last day was kind of funny because what ended up happening was I think I had successfully distracted one or two people, but there was definitely another couple of people ignoring me. In fact, a very fine lady, Stacey Mucci, basically tweeting, "When I know this is bullshit. I am not following any of this crap from you. I know a competitor when I see one." So she was completely onto me. She was like, "I'm not listening to him."
Great.
So I was like, "Oh, these people are probably catching up." So it was quite panicky. I had the 8 numbers, but here's what happened. I did all this cross-referencing. I went down my rabbit holes. I made loads of mistakes, but then I finally get to the town Winslow, Arizona. And it was actually fifth on the list, typical of the five. It was the last one.
Of course.
And immediately I was like, Winslow. Okay, it's kind of got, like there could be some wordplay even in that. Wasn't necessarily trying to read into that, but thought that's interesting. And then put in landmarks in Winslow, Arizona. And the first thing to appear is the on the standing at the corner foundation. Obviously, I had this word corner in big letters on my like board of all the kind of stuff that I've been collecting, all the clues. And I immediately was like, "Oh, I've got this is it." And I checked all the numbers, and 5 of the 8 numbers were right, which meant I was absolutely like it had to be there. Because when you think about coordinates, the first 2 numbers in the longitude and latitude, if they're right, you're basically on the spot. But the next 2 numbers are very small amounts of space. So you could just be across the road looking at the same thing and it's still that place.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, now it's just a case of like, I know my numbers. So I just have to plug them in the way that like they probably closely approximate the coordinates that were given for this on Google Map. And I put it in, and don't I have one of my numbers wrong? So one of my clues from like a week earlier, my Maria Konnikova clue. I solved it incorrectly. So I was like, shit, I've done this wrong. What am I going to do? So, but then I realized because I knew everything else, and this number had to go in one of 2 places. And if it went there, my other number went there. So that was fine. I was like, well, that's only 200 possibilities. So as soon as Brad opened the door so that we could start putting in guesses that night, I call up my friend Blocky and I say, how do you feel about filling out captchas? Because it was a captcha so you couldn't brute force.
Right.
So we're just mashing like the 200 options. He takes 100, I take 100. And after, I'd say it was about the 140th guess out of the 200 between us, it pops up, you've done it.
Wow. Oh, fantastic.
So I never actually solved, hands up, I never solved the last clue. I sort of manually brute forced the last one.
That makes a lot more sense now that you put it like that. It didn't make sense to me that you would actually be able to solve all the clues, knowing what I know about you. I just like there's no way.
What was really tilting was I did solve that fucking clue a week earlier, and I gave up on my solution. I was like, this is definitely book code, and I ran.
Yeah, Barry me Carter. Too.
I rang Barry Carter and I said, Barry, do you have Maria's The Biggest Bluff on your bookshelf? And he's like, no, I have it on Kindle. I'm like, I fucking have it on Kindle as well. Should have rang you. I should have called you.
Yeah. So I even had the book and I still couldn't get the freaking answer.
But then I looked up the book online and it said that there were 3 different editions, 3 different lengths. And I was like, oh, well, then it's not that because.
Me too. That was my thought as well. Like, how could it be? Who knows what edition they're looking at? Yeah. God.
So I gave up on it. So I had it, but I gave up on
it. Brad Willis, I know you're probably not listening, but Brad Willis, if you're listening, way to go. And also, God, I hate you so much. Like,
yes, I feel both of those things.
So impressive, but you are a hair. God, the pain is real. It put me through the crucible. But fine. Congratulations, David. I guess that's going to be a lot of fun. It was a really good promotion that they did. It was a legitimately fun activity until you realized how hard it was, and it was like banging your head against a wall.
Yeah, and until you realized that it was going to be like 16 days, because again, but here's the problem: you get to like day 9, and you're like, there can't be that many people who've got this far because everyone should have given up by now. So you in your mind, you're like, my equity is probably like $2,000 or $2,500 in this already.
Yeah,
how can I not continue?
You can't give up. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. But no, I have to say to echo what you said, amazing from Poker Org. amazing from Bradley and Slow Poker to kind of put that amount of creativity and effort, because it must have taken them so long to conceive of the whole thing, and make something that was genuinely fun and not just a like retweet competition, which is obviously the easiest way to farm engagement. But actually, this was like very engaging for the people who did commit. I realized that they're trying to build like an almost like an ARG community now, and I hope they succeed because it is great fun and it meshes with poker very nicely. Good luck to anyone playing the runner competition coming up. I think it's on November 4th, where you're going to have to chase Slow Poker around Vegas and catch him before the end of the day. I think that's going to be a great one as well. I think you win a seat for that one. But also want to say, obviously, PokerStars gave the prize, and it's a fantastic prize. And look, I'm a Unibet ambassador, and I participated in, and they were all the people at Stars were very happy for me, or at least they pretended to be very happy for me. They probably aren't really very happy for me, but like they did pretend in a convincing way. So I appreciate that from them too. And also that Unibet, to be fair, don't mind me jumping in, going for rival site promotions. I think there's a kind of camaraderie around all the sites that sort of play by the rules, all the proper regulated sites. Our industry is fucked and polluted with these dodgy app sites and crypto sites and like work around the payment processor sites. And even some of the more legit sites are actually pretty dodge these days. So when you are in that sort of maybe small number these days of legit sites who do things properly, I think maybe these companies don't mind the other companies succeeding a little bit, because it's almost like us versus them.
Well, it was a phenomenal experience. And it led to, so you've got a main event seat for the North American Poker Tour that's coming up this week in Vegas. I know there's some other events that you're planning to play while you're there. I want to ask, so you've played a lot of poker, obviously. Your game's already at a very high level. When you get the opportunity to play in like a series like this or go travel for a tour, do you prepare at all from a strategy point of view? Do you still have like a study aspect to your game, or are you just so immersed in the world of poker that creating content and playing kind of makes up your study?
It's a really good question, and I definitely made a conscious sacrifice, I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago, to become more splintered, a bit more of a mix of what I do. Obviously, the media side, the podcast being the main thing there, the ambassadoring, all of that stuff is hugely time consuming. So it's absolutely, hurt my game if you want to put it in those terms. I don't play or study as much as I would like, but there are only just so many hours in the day. I made that decision conscientiously. I'm obviously compensated as an ambassador for Unibet and the various other things that I do. So, it's not poor me on this, but if I didn't have any of that stuff, I would be focusing much closer on poker. So great question in a way. So when like the WPT World Championships in December come up,
yes,
the World Series in Vegas come up, and now this kind of thing as well, which is, people might be like, oh, Lappin won it and, he plays 10Ks and 5. I don't play that many, to be honest. Like it's a big shot in my year. And when I do play the main event, I sell half of it. Like I don't, like I'm not rolled to be like flicking in these things like it's nothing. So it's a big deal for me to win this, and I'm really excited to be in the mix. And I do make a little bit of extra effort. So like in the last week, been hammering my DTO reps a little bit harder. Obviously I talk poker strategy with Dara an awful lot anyway, and he's like certainly the best mind of anyone I know very, very closely, and one of the best out there, probably the best communicator actually. Like there are better players than Dara O'Carney. I don't know if there are better communicators of strategy. He's just that good. So I'm very lucky to have him in my orbit, and loads of great friends who are great poker players. So I do discuss poker an awful lot. I prepare the strategy segments with Dara. So, I have to get into the weeds on those hands for the show. But yeah, no, it isn't even a third of what I should be doing if I was like a full-time poker pro these days. So I have to sort of make it up. I think what helps though is that I have a lot of experience. So I think certain amount of composure, certain amount of having been there in the arena, gone deep. People will point out, not that deep, Dave. I don't see that many final tables, but gone quite deep in a lot of good tournaments over the years. Somehow managed to come like last 2 and 3 tables a lot. That's sad for me. But, having kind of been there and got that table time in over 20 years, and obviously having got a lot of reps in online during maybe a 10-year period where I did play a lot, probably played as many tables as anyone in the world could for a period. Look, I think that's a huge benefit. and probably makes up for some shortcomings on sharpness these days.
That makes sense. Now, when you've been to Vegas many times, with Vegas particularly, is it just all poker while you're there? Is there anything else that you like to do, sort of like for fun, or to touch grass, or to just get off the strip, or is it just sleeping and poker, like most grinders when they get to Vegas?
It really is just sleeping and poker. I suppose I feel a bit extra guilty when I go to Vegas because they tend to be the longer trips. I might do 2 trips a year that are 10 or 11 days. And
Yeah,
it's kind of those two the World Series in the summer, the WPT in the winter. And when I'm away from family, obviously my partner's mine and our 2 kids. That's, a tough gig. So I
sure.
feel an obligation to work my ass off, to be honest, and maximize the hours. That's not to say that like you don't organically get a bit of time off here and there because you just bust stuff in the evening. You can't late reg anymore, so you get a few hours off. Maybe you get to have a nice meal with someone you know, or even a couple of drinks, maybe 1 or 2 of the nights that I'd be there, but not too much of that. And actually, rooming with Darrow Carney, and this is going to be the standards that you have to uphold as well, Jim. Now is yeah, just that sort of professionalism, I suppose, when I'm there. Now, I have to be honest, having said that, I am feeling like this is a slightly different trip because it's almost like a all-in package that I've won, and I want to kind
Right.
of enjoy some of these days. But then, no joke, for the main event days, I will be all business. It just might be that like if I bust the main or the day before the main, I might be kind of happy to have a bit of fun. But usually Vegas is very tunnel vision.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And the hard thing, we a lot of rec players, we talk about planning trips to Vegas, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, we got to have dinner one night or something like that." The problem is when you're in Vegas, you're playing tournaments every day. If you're free for dinner, A, it means that you busted, and so that's not exactly like no one's in high spirits. And B, it's very hard to plan around because you can't
Yeah.
anticipate not being in a tournament. So I find it's a very kind of haphazard and last minute set of like maybe we can get together if we both bust the same tournament on the same day. Have you had any like because you travel for other events, of course, not just in Vegas, but a lot of the European events as well. Is there like a cheat code to get around that? Is there like a way to make plans that I'm missing, or is it really just sort of like hoping to bust is a weird way to put it, but like how do you make time to get together with other fun people on these trips?
Yeah, I basically do try to like create a chat group, or maybe it will be across a couple of chat groups where everybody knows that everyone's there. And as soon as you bust, you sort of post I bust. So people
Hmm.
know who are the stragglers who are, out of the tournaments and wouldn't mind going for a glass of sangria or a meal or whatever it is. And I think that's probably you just want to always be in communication so that when that moment happens that 2 or more of you are gone, you at least have each other to go, have a beer or whatever you want to do. And I think that's important. But breakfast's become a kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's the one time you have before the thing starts, or maybe you don't mind late regging an hour late, so you have a little bit of time for breakfast or lunch. But yeah, generally it's sort of a case of just trying to be nimble because you can't,
Hmm.
as you said, predict it too much. Very occasionally, I will have an actual day off. Like if I play 1C of the main or 1D of the main, then you get the next day off. And I don't play that day. I don't like grind another satellite or something usually. So, you might get an organic day off, and then that's the day you can use to plan something nice. But yeah, look, it isn't easy. And sometimes, the best will in the world, you will almost like ships passing in the night with people who you really wanted to see.
Yeah, I even when Mrs. Bluffsterini's come down to Vegas for a couple of these trips, it's, we make dinner reservations with the expectation that she's going to be eating dinner alone. And
Yeah.
if I bust, I'll go join her. But it is hard. And, like, so even if you're traveling with friends or loved ones, as a tournament player in particular, it's just very difficult to find that time. So it's a little tricky, but I mean, first world problems, right?
Sure, sure. No, no, no. We're very lucky to play a game for a living, particularly, getting to, travel around a bit, get to see some great cities in
Hmm.
Europe and in the States and elsewhere as well. I was in Marrakesh only a couple of weeks ago. It's great to be able to spend some time in the African continent too. It's kind of a growing poker scene there. And Unibet have a great event in Marrakesh. Alex Henry from the Unibet DSO has about 20 stops on his tour now, all across
Wow.
Europe mainly. There was one in Mauritius last year. Marrakesh seems to be a fixture. And he's branching out much more than France because his mainstay is French stops, but he actually does manage to have quite a few. There was a Barcelona event, there was a London event. He's spreading his wings too. And he's a great poker organizer who has a great brand that actually, it's the deep stack model. It's sort of like a 50K starting stack. So there's a little bit more play. And he really prides himself on giving that bit of extra value to the players for, the usual 10% rake. So yeah, big fan of those, and I've been trying to support them more and more. Obviously, they're connected with Unibet, so it makes sense for me too. But
Sure.
he literally has 20 stops, so I pick and choose which ones to go to.
That's great, man. So one of the parts of your recent victory that I'm really excited about was that you got this golden pass or whatever it's called, which includes a fast track to the audition stage of the big game. So, or the big game on tour, as it's called right now. So, if people don't know, it's this amazing show that's produced by Poker Stars, where a contestant gets chosen, and an amateur or recreational player typically, to play at a table with five professional players or poker celebrities, and they get staked $50,000 of tournament money, of like studio money, and they get to keep anything they win. So if they lose, who cares? But if they win, they get to keep it. So it's a fantastic free roll, and it's also just like a really fun event. The people that they choose to be at the table are usually a good mix of like skill and character. Um, you must be familiar with the show. How much of a motivating factor for you was the ability to just go right into the audition phase of the big game when it came to this runner competition?
That wasn't part of it, to be honest, because I suppose what intrigued me about the game was the game itself, and I didn't have any expectation to win. So I was just doing it because it was a fun way to spend, an hour a day on a brain teaser. But when I got down to the end game and realized that was part of it, suddenly the equity of that became very looming in my mind. 50 grand stake in a game that's not exactly like a really tough game either. In fairness to Stars, like it's a brilliantly made show, but they find you a whale, they find you a celebrity. I'm going to be the fourth, maybe if I'm lucky, I might be the third best player out of the six, depending on who are the pros who play. I'm probably fourth, let's be honest, but never know. So like to be mid pack in something like that with a really decent chance of spinning up your 50K. And then also like what I'm really intrigued by as well, and I have been doing a little bit of work on this just on the off chance that I make it through the auditions. I'm sure there'll be some great candidates out there. But you never know. My hat's in the ring now. What I would love to do is get into that end game, that last 30 hands, where the ICM is sort of weird because if you get down to like 20 hands left and you're down money, well, obviously you've got to ramp up variance and punt a little bit. They make a pot limit so you can't completely punt pre, but you're going to be wanting to blow pots. That makes total sense. So I will be doing that obviously in that scenario and understanding that. But the bit that I love, the part of the equation that I love the most is like if you're up 25 grand and then like for some people, the inclination would be like, oh, I really want to lock up 25 grand. 25 grand's a lot of money. I'd like to have 25 grand. But in my mind, everything would be about well, if I double up from 75K to 150, I keep 100. So I'm risking 25 to win 100. That's a massive difference. And even if the 25 means something to me, the chance to win 100, I would put it out of my mind for that. So, don't get me wrong, there's probably a point, like if I'm up 150 in the game, I'm sitting there with 200K, now it becomes more like an even exchange that like getting to 400, well, you'd have 350, but you'd be risking 150. So yes, okay, you'd still be getting a plus EV spot, but it's not dramatic and the subjective value of that money would be precious. So you're not going to see me hunt in that moment, but definitely in that sort of like anything from $1 up to 40K up, I think is the real sweet spot where gambling becomes very appealing.
I'm glad to hear that. I had been thinking about it similarly. I'm also, for folks, if you're interested, I'm also down in Vegas. I'm going to try and win my way in through a qualifying milestone satellite tournament. Some of us have to, work our way in, Dave. We don't just get given these fantastic prizes.
I fucking worked, mate. That was like a full-time job. Brad Willis
it was. It really was. It really was. But I was thinking about it in a similar way. It's like, as you say, the ICM incentives, like the incentives of risk are really interesting in that, especially as it gets closer to the end. If folks are all interested, I've got some fun stuff about my own journey on there in the Poker Org column that comes out this week. So I hope folks will come and check that out.
Oh, I
So
can't wait to read that, Jim, because like firstly, you're an excellent writer and a great
oh
addition to their team. They're lucky to have you. Secondly, you come from a unique perspective, I think, as somebody who would consider themselves recreational, but you play
yeah,
very, very well. So you're like
oh
a serious recreational. And I think that's Dara always talks about this as well. Like that's the most interesting marketplace because serious recreational who really values the game's smithery of poker is hopefully like the biggest demographic actually, like more than people who do manage to make a living from it and
oh
be
for
quote
sure,
unquote pros, and
yeah.
more than the maybe fishier players who treat it like gambling. It's the people who really are passionate about the game. So you come from that perspective in a really kind of intellectual way, in a really interesting way, loads of personality. So and that's infused in your article. So I can't wait to read your article, first of all. But secondly, like that journey for you of trying to get into it now, like if you do make, I know you have to win something to get into the audition stage, but you are like a really good candidate. I can see you blitzing the auditions, to be honest, because I can imagine you try harding at the singing. They could make a montage of all these like bad defeats that you've had at Poker Stars competitions, being beaten up by superior
Oh, there it
voices.
is. That's better.
So that would be lovely that they could make a whole vignette of your failures or your near
Mm,
misses, and
hmm.
everyone loves an underdog. So like let's get Jim into the show.
I don't know if they have enough time for the full montage of failures, but I'm just glad that you threw that in at the end because I was going to say, can someone check David's temperature? Because he's saying a lot of nice things about me and he might not be feeling well at the moment. But thank you, David. I appreciate that. I am super excited. I actually like when the big game first came out back in 2010. It was at a really weird time for me. I had a spinal injury and I was like laid up at home and poker had like become this way that I was going to be able to compete again. Like,
Are you auditioning to me right now? Is this what you're? Are you pressing on your
yeah,
audition
David, do you
thing?
know anyone at Poker Stars? Can you
Do you
make
want
this
me to put
happen?
some violins on in the background? What the fuck is this?
I'm really excited about it. It's a show that's meant a lot to me over the years. So I am absolutely putting my hat in the ring. And if it's you and me in the audition room, I'm gonna go for your Achilles because I want it. I want it that bad. Um, all right. So what I knew this was going to be a fun interview. Um, so David, what else do
I'm
you
not enjoying it at all.
know? But you're putting on a brave face, and I appreciate that. What else have you been kind of like working on recently? What else is new and exciting in the world of David Lappin? I mean, not that exciting, but given the circumstances. But what's new at least? Can we polish it up a little?
We have some really fun shows coming up actually. So the chip race continues to be, my baby, Dara and my baby,
Oh,
and
is that your podcast?
that's that's my two-time GPI award-winning podcast.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'll check it out. Cool. Oh, look at
Uh,
that. That's great.
yeah.
Nice.
So
Man, they really
so
give those
yeah.
out like M&Ms, don't they? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, like I rigged the first one. Negranny will tell you about that, and then
Okay.
I obviously managed to win the second one on merit. No, look,
Ugh.
Dara and I, and now Barry as well, and Sharon, because Sharon is our sort of backroom support on all of this stuff too. We do put a lot of work into it, and one thing I'm going to be honest about something, and there's no disrespect to the people who are on, but when it goes through like the summer months. And
Yeah.
it's like World Series, and then ends up in Barcelona, and then it's all like really busy because it goes straight into like is it W Coop or it's W Coop then comes those few
Right.
ones. Very hard to book guests. Not going to
Sure.
lie, that's the time of the year. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's the time of the year. It's very hard to get like the top line guests that you're after. And now we still managed to get plenty of very good guests, but. I would say that the back end of our year now, our next like we had Dylan Weissman on the last one. Today I released an episode with Jesse Lonis. He's fucking brilliant. Next show has Ape Styles after that. He's obviously
Awesome.
total legend. And then yeah, we've a few plans. I won't say just in case we don't get them, but we've a few other very good ones. Hopefully before Christmas. We just had Nate Silver on the lock-in, which was brilliant because it was like a pre-election idea. Because we always do
Right.
a kind of a pre-election betting episode of the lock-in specifically. That's our sister show to the chip race. And we did it with Brian Paris 4 years ago, and he was brilliant because he's very knowledgeable about the political landscape in America. And for non-Americans, we pay attention to it more than most. So we were really interested in that stuff. We usually have big bets on the election as well. So we were kind of, seeing how our action was looking. And then, this opportunity to have Nate was on because Nate has a book to plug. Not to say that he wouldn't have come on the show if he didn't, but that certainly helped. Thank you, Nate.
Sure.
And he was brilliant. He did like 45 minutes with us, and it was a great show. And it's done very well, actually. It's done good numbers for us. So I feel like we've got good momentum going into the last maybe 3 months of the year for our shows being a bit better than the average one. I hope the average one is still pretty good, but a bit better than the average one. I think we've got some really good stuff coming up.
That's cool. It's one of the, I listen to a lot of poker podcasts. It's one that I really enjoy. And yes, I mean, keep it up. That's amazing, the success that you guys have had with that show, and well deserved.
Thank you. Look, I think there are loads of good shows out there, and I think they've all been recognized, except for yours. So, when the GPI awards come along, this look, I don't know if it's the same on everyone's side, but it's like I'm passing it to you now through the screen. There we go. That's right. I'm handing the award for next year.
I love it.
The one guys we would love to see win are the Thinking Poker crew, but also you guys. I think you do both phenomenal work, and we'd love to see someone else honored. We have enough trophies. We don't need any more trophies, unless you really want to give us our third one, because actually a third one would be very meaningful for me personally. That's the one I've always dreamt of being 3-time GPI award winning person. But if you don't want to give me the podcast award, I have been writing articles for the last few months, and I'm gonna submit to the GPI my Curb series, the one where I was bitching about late registration, about unlimited re-entry, and I'm working on a piece where I'm bitching about poker stables.
Oh, nice. Well, I no hyperbole, David. I think this might be the year where the poker world really learns, like, who is this David Lappin guy? You're going to find a lot of people recognize your name. This has just been a big year. I'm just saying, it's very impressive. So congratulations, again, you really have ascended.
That was kind of a sinister. It was almost like he's going to die and he's going to be in the in memoriam reel, and everyone will go, "Oh, I remember that guy.
I remember."
You know what? I never liked him, but he wasn't as bad as now thinking back. Now that he's dead, he wasn't.
Yeah, we'll say some nice things
bad.
about him. Yeah. Hey, I promise to say some nice things about you after you die.
Thank you.
I will. I swear. You can count on that. Yeah. But leaving poker out of it for a minute here, I want to get to know David the man a little bit. What are you doing to keep yourself nourished, keeping your brain and your soul nourished? How are you having fun in the world? How are you letting off steam? I know you've got a lot of intellectual pursuits. You're a student of philosophy. You're a parent. I know you have a lot of irons in the fire. But what are you doing for recreation? How are you keeping yourself fun, or trying to, in your case?
Yeah, if you ask Darrell Carney that question, he would say I drink copiously. But I couch it in mixology. I couch my alcoholism in an art form.
That's very
I make really good cocktails.
Yes.
No, at a serious note, actually, I'm just in that phase where I have 2 kids who are young, and actually they just quite rightly get all my time, and I love that. This is the beauty of being a poker player. It's really come into its own for me in the last 7 years, is that being able to take your... Look, I hate being away and you have these couple of 10-day trips and other 1-week trips during the year, and Sharon holds the fort down, and I miss them terribly when I'm gone. But actually, when I'm home, I'm really home. When I'm here, I can sort of just make sure that I don't do my work when they're around, when they've got between 4 o'clock from school and bedtime. I can just be around for almost all of it. I can get up in the mornings and bring them to school and then go off to the coffee shop, write my little article or whatever I'm doing that day. So I can really tailor it around their lives. And you just don't get those years back. I'm pretty sure in about 5 or 6 years, they won't want to hang out with me at all. But I'm luckily in that phase where, the eldest one thinks I'm not lame yet. And the youngest one actually needs me to survive. So he has no choice. This is the time to kind of, if you can, and again, super lucky in the job of poker that I can be flexible with my time to be around them growing up. I just kind of don't want it any other way. Obviously spend time with friends, when I'm away, even here as well from time to time. Spend time with my partner, but actually, like, we're both in parent mode, and it's great fun.
Yeah. So looking ahead a little bit then, like if you could chart your own path for the next 3, 4, 5 years, something like that, what would success look like for you?
Oh, well, like, I hate to kind of like put a money kind of aspect to it, but it does kind of end up being a little bit like, if I always kind of think like, what if you just had that kind of 500,000 score, something that was kind of chunky, the kind of score I haven't had in my career, to be honest. I'm much more of a grinder sort of resume throughout. And I think it's probably the idea of having another home. So I think we would love
Mm.
to leave Malta for our summers, maybe go back to Ireland. So maybe, buy a place that we could live in Ireland as well, something that we could maybe rent out when we're not there, but just something that we could go back and forth to. That would feel really nice because we miss friends and family tremendously. We love Malta for loads of reasons, but like we also, it's a small little island, so we'd love to get back to Ireland as well. Success would look like, I suppose it's kind of like career success too. Like I do take pride in like the show. I know it's like fucking 24 seasons or whatever way I structure it. It's like between the two shows, like we're coming up on 300 episodes, and that's a big
Right.
body of work. And I suppose I really hang my hat on that in a big way. I'd love to do more in commentary, like the commentary work I do for Merit. I
Mm.
love. Hoping to get maybe a day or two with WPT during this World Championship. Stars let me in the booth for the Irish Open this year, which is a tournament that's really close to my heart, actually. And I love to be a part of the team there. So again, fair play to them. I'm rival ambassador, but they're very happy to have me in there with the local knowledge and, hopefully bring a bit of enthusiasm to that gig. Yeah, I'd love to do more in commentary. That would be a huge one for me if I could like move up the ranks and get some bigger gigs that way, because that's the thing I love doing that I don't do as much
Mm.
of. And then, yeah, I don't know past that. Like obviously it would be to have a good result. Like I do feel like I have knocked on the door a lot, and never kind of, got that top three finish in the marquee event. So I would love that. That would be very satisfying too. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, that they would be the things that would excite me the most.
Well, I can speak. I'll speak for Taylor Moss, who runs our Marek Madness every spring. You'd be welcome to come and sit in the booth with one of us for some of our heads-up match commentary, and you'll find that the pay is commensurate with your talent level. So I think that would be a really good fit for you, because it is, of course, a volunteer-based position.
Well, no, no, no. I'm very open to any of these kinds of things. Joking aside, I do love to contribute to, all of that kind of stuff. It's a social thing too. That's the lovely thing about doing commentary. Like I work with Ali Najad, James Dempsey, and Andrew Headley, three absolutely cracking people to work
Yes.
with. No disrespect to the other two boys. James is amazing. Andrew's amazing. But like Ali is like broadcaster polished level, and getting to work with him has taught me more than working with anybody else, I have to say, in commentary. Just because of, some of the polish, some of the ways he does segues, just some of, what he brings as a kind of an anchor role, I've really
Mm.
absorbed and learned a lot more, and I think got better at myself because of. So, it's just great getting to work with those guys. And yeah, if I could, as I said, take it up a notch, that would be cool as well.
So my last question for you is about, you mentioned that you, for big ticket items, you sell about half your action.
Mm.
I did my own sort of staking experiment this year with WSOP Maine, which was super exciting and fun for everybody involved. But
An
there are a
amazing
lot.
run.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I mean, hey, you get aces enough, you're going to go pretty far in a tournament. But
No, no, no.
um,
You were grinding, man. You put in a prop. What would you make, like early day five?
after dinner, day five, actually made it all the way to the end of day
Sick,
five. Yeah, it was
sick.
awesome. It was awesome. Very, very cool. Very fun. And I couldn't have done it without these like 35 people who each chipped in about 1 or 2% of my
Brilliant.
action. That was the only way I could do it. And so I'm taking a similar approach with the World Poker Tour Championship event. And Matt Affleck's giving me some coaching. Like I don't know.
Nice.
I just think I'm dreaming. I think this must just be like some wonderful poker dream that I'm a part of. But this isn't about me. I'm asking for you, what like the logistics of staking are kind of tricky, especially as an international player playing in American events. Can you just talk a little bit like how do you choose who you're selling to? Do you sell at markup? How do you handle the logistics of transfers? Does the IRS withhold any of your prizes? I mean, in the event that you actually end up having a good finish. I know it's all academic for you so far, but when it
True,
actually
true,
does
true.
happen, what would that look like?
So whether I was Irish, which I am, or in Malta, there's no tax. So we're very lucky compared to you guys on that front. What I would say is I do sell at markup. Like these are the bigger events and they're the bigger buying events, but they are the softest ones. So I know, they much more resemble like a 1K or 2K than the 10K that they are. So again, I don't mind, and I think I'm good value at the markup price I choose. I have a couple of kind of wealthier backers, for want of a better phrase, who normally take big pieces. They always like to take a big chunk. And then I have a kind of group of friends. We've been all pals for years together, and we all buy each other's action. So everyone's buying between like 2 and 5%, and that all adds up as well. And then, if there is anything left, and actually, to be honest, that will mostly cover it. But if there is anything left, or sometimes I will just siphon off a little bit for Stake Kings, because I have a little partnership with those guys, and it's been really nice. They're really nice people over there. I like the idea of open marketplaces for this kind of stuff because it gives people an opportunity to have a sweat. I obviously post things to social media at the end of every break, so I'm good for the sweat in that respect. That I'll give you value for watching the horse race if you like, and yeah, and I usually try to siphon off like 5% or 10% that can be sold because they let people buy really small pieces depending on what it is. So you could buy 0.1% of me there, and that's fine. Whereas like obviously I don't want to do the paperwork of a 0.1%, no matter how much I love the person. So that's a nice way of kind of putting something out there for the community, want of a better phrase, and that's been fun as well. And I've made those people a good bit of money too over the years, so that's nice for them.
Sure you have, David. And so how do you choose how much
not this year, but in previous years?
This was something that I struggled with. Like, how do you choose how much to sell? Like, assuming you had access to, like, you could sell as much as you wanted. Like, what's the not only for you, but sort of like you're more familiar with this with other pros than I am as well. Like, what is there a sweet spot? Is it really person specific? Like, how do you decide how much of your own action to keep? I guess is the real question.
Great question. And what I would advise people to do, and there will be an element of guesswork with this, but what you basically should be doing is adopting a Kelly criterion model. So you should be looking at your actual net worth and what you have, and you should be punching that into the Kelly criterion model. Now you're going to have to do a guesstimate on what your edge is, because that's the bit that you have to be honest about, you to be accurate with, or else this will go wrong as a computation. So if you put in what your edge will be, and obviously there's a spread of outcomes because it's not just win or lose, it's like cash for min cash for a lot more, get all the buy-ins at the end if you win nearly. So it's you have to kind of work that out on a kind of a deviation, and then make a good choice to stay within your bankroll. For me these days, depends on the size of the field. Like I'd be very happy to take 2K of myself in a small field because obviously the variance is much less. But when I play these kind of big field events, usually something around a K or maybe just over a K is about right. People would be surprised how low you end up going based on your net worth when you are in these things. Like it is, that's why a lot of poker players go broke or need staking or whatever, because they don't observe this stuff strictly. And it would be a much lower number than you realize, particularly when you play these massive fields. The massive fields change everything, changes more than any other factor in all of this, to be honest. So, but then little exceptions. So little caveats to this. World Championship, World Series main event. Do like to keep a little bit extra of myself in those, a little bit of a shot take, if we want to call it that. Still sell half, like I said, and I sell at markup. So I'm probably, in there for 30% of the buy-in or something in that region, maybe 25% of the buy-in. So that's still more than I would usually have for a 10,000 runner field, but I don't mind. It's once or twice a year for that. A couple of splurges where I break my own rules, but usually follow those rules really strictly.
Right on. Well, I always enjoy our conversations, especially these ones over Zoom where the odor isn't as much of an issue. David Lappin, thank you again for coming back on the show. And I'm really looking forward to bunking up with you next week. I think we're going to have a great time. And hopefully you can rub off some of that Lappin luck on me, and maybe I'll get to win one of these head-to-heads that we have eventually.
Yeah, look, it'll be really good fun hanging out. Obviously, we'll be charting our adventures on social media. I'm sure they can follow your Twitter, or my Twitter, or whatever other social media platforms we use. But also, I don't know if we'll be able to make any content together while we're there. Maybe there'll be a sneaky video in us, who knows. Particularly, if one of us does get to the big game. Like I'll be on your rail, and I'm sure you'd be on mine. So that would be, in all sincerity, an amazing experience if something like that happened.
It would. Well, I'm looking forward to it already. David Lappin, everybody. David, thanks again, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Great being here.
Awesome.
Now, this has been an amazing episode so far. The interview with Dave Lappin was amazing because
it
Dave
better be because he threw us off our game.
Dave and Jim have quite a I guess they're very aggressive together. They're always competing. I mean, they competed at the Irish Poker Open where they had a karaoke battle, and there's just a lot of history there. So I'm looking really forward to listening to that interview.
Yeah, and they're going to be roommates right now in Vegas. So if they don't kill each other, will probably be some good stories out of that.
Well, if they're roommates in Vegas right now, why couldn't they just be here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Again, who's
they might be playing poker. Who knows?
Could be.
All right. If there's nothing else, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Chats edition. But I encourage the YouTube followers to stick around for a live recording of the Forums podcast coming right up next. So I'd like to thank the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, our guest David Lappin, our RECing Crew members, John, Chris, and I guess me, our YouTube chatters, and the audience. We'll see you next week on the RecPoker Podcast.